I hope that you all can hear me, so hope you have enough power for one more session because this is the last one today. I can probably skip first few slides because this introduction was very detailed, and I have some small secret for you that this conference was actually on my bucket list for the last few years, and finally I'm speaking here. So thanks sponsors for reminding me, and thanks for making everything possible, and for having so much good time here in Belgrade. Okay, so this is my name is Peric Mazar. I'm from Split. In the introduction, he mentioned the Shift conference. I'm not the Shift actually. Today is development conference, but I'm no longer in part of organization, but I'm quite active in community. So in last 2 years, we co-founded Blokada, which is doing blockchain events in Croatia, and we founded the Tinel Meetup, which is monthly event in our office, and we are bringing all the speakers from all parts of the world once per month to speak. Some of the speakers here at the conference were also our guests in Split. Regarding Locastic, it's a digital agency. We are 22 people at the moment. We are doing a lot of user experience projects lately for big clients, like telecom operators, banks, and etc. And also we are doing a lot of custom Symfony development. So one of the biggest projects that we did with Symfony and API platform was ticketing system, which is running in 80 different countries with different currencies, different languages, and everything else. So that was like very, very interesting. The fun fact about us is that we are actually owning the Counter-Strike Global Offensive team, and this is first time in last 5 years that we have a team in Croatia which can compete with Serbian teams because you are much better than we are in esports. So my talk today is about Symfony. So before I start, I gave you an introduction about myself. I just want to see some hands who is using Symfony okay, and Symfony 4. Okay, few people. I will talk today about Symfony from version 1 to version 4, how it changed, and how I started to use that. So at the beginning of my career, it was back on a college, I started doing some PHP development, and first I did some very, very simple scripts. After that, I started doing some freelance projects. So what I did, I set up some kind of the framework by myself. Like that was just a bunch of classes well connected together with some primitive routing, database manager, etc. So that worked. I did some projects on that, but as I made progress as developer, as I grow up, I wanted to have some better framework solution because I was aware that something that I'm building by myself, it's probably not as good as something that a bunch of people in community is building. So I started investigating and I found about Symfony, and Symfony was Symfony 2 still was in development phase, so I took one project using Symfony 1.4. And this is like how I see actually everything even in a framework world, in a PHP world, in a web world. So at the beginning, the web was different than today. We had like we had like full stack frameworks like Symfony 1.4 at the backend, and on front end we have some simple jQuery websites, or even not the JavaScript website. Today is different because we have like really complex solutions on the front end built with some JavaScript frameworks, and we have requirements for different kind of frameworks on backend as well. So Symfony 1.4 was like, that was 13 years ago, I think, here in 2005, yeah. So it was a full stack framework. We didn't even have a templating system, so we did templating with PHP. It has clear separation between front-end and back-end application with data model that was shared between two applications. And you could generate some kind of administration to the console because that was the part of the package in Symfony 1.4. After 1.4, there was Symfony 2, which brought a lot of changes. The biggest changes was that we had standalone components. An idea was that you can build your own framework based on Symfony components, but that didn't work well. So we end up with having some kind of distribution things, and we usually download the distribution, start a project, and start working on that. Usually, we always downloaded the standard edition, so we got a bunch of things that we didn't need, and we developed different kind of application on that. For example, even if you were developing some kind of console application, you will usually still start with standard edition of Symfony. Of course, some developers managed to take standalone components and build their own framework, so partially that was that was successful. And then we got the 10 years celebration of Symfony, and we got the Symfony free version, which was the most bored Symfony version ever, and one of the slowest. Why? Because it was just transaction period from Symfony 2 to Symfony 4. So basically we had all the same features that we have in Symfony 4, but we had a lot of deprecated code which was inside the Symfony package, and that was probably the reason why it was the slowest. And then Symfony 4 happened. What Symfony 4 did is that they changed the way how we are actually building the application. So the idea was to start small and then set up the framework by your needs. To pick manually what do you need inside your application, inside your stack, and to do that properly. So this is just if we compare how it looks. So Symfony 3 was Symfony 2.8 plus minus deprecated features, and Symfony 4.0 was Symfony 3.4 minus deprecated features plus a new way to develop application. So what could be better in this scenario from moving from Symfony 2 to Symfony 3? So if you worked with Symfony 2, you know that installing the bundle was downloaded via Composer, set up configuration, add it to the bundles, and then start using. If you want to remove something, you need to do same, but in other direction. And that was like too much time spending for basically nothing, for the thing that can be automated. Also, I already mentioned the standard edition was not good enough. So we need to change how developers are actually using. We need to improve developers' experience for the Symfony framework. And you always had a feeling that you have a bunch of code that you are not using, and that's in your code base. And that was true, because if you started with standard edition, you had like 73 or 74 packages downloaded just for, I don't know, building a console command. So the idea about developers' experience, and this is the quote for Fabien Potencier, was we need to have framework which is starting small, like micro framework, and then it can grow as application grows. And that's actually where we are with Symfony 4. So finally, we have composition over inheritance. So we are not using entire package and then just doing customization, adding some other bundles or things like that. We are composing our framework. So we have feeling, and that's the truth, that we are more controlling the framework and that we are not so coupled to the framework. So Symfony 4, it starts like micro framework. Then, as you need something, you will add features. So my first project that I did on Symfony 4 was web scraper. I need to scrape some data from some website. So the first thing what I did, I downloaded the Symfony 4. I added a browser component from the Symfony so that I can scrape some data. Later, application grows, so I need some administration system. I need some, I actually added a messenger component because we need to use RabbitMQ and things like that. But I didn't use forms because I didn't need them. I didn't use Twig at the beginning because I didn't need that. So it was like simple console application that grow over the time. So basically with the Symfony 4, we can build whatever we want, even small application, small console application, or some big traditional website. Of course, there are some casualties. So Silex is no longer supported, is no longer developing, but we don't need Silex anymore. Silex was micro framework built on top of Symfony components. Okay, first, what we have as a part of Symfony 4 is Symphony Flux. I will talk about it. So fun fact was that Composer started as a plugin system for PHP BB and Symfony. But actually, the fact is that nobody used it in that way. So we are using in a way I already described. Download, configure manually. If you need to remove, do that manually. So Symfony Flux is a component that was missing. So who knows what's the Symfony Flux? Who is using? Okay, few of people. So Symfony Flux is just a component that you add to your Composer JSON file. And once he downloads the package, he can read some receipts, and he can do some things for you. Basically, he can configure entire bundle for you. You don't need to do that manually. How it works, it's actually very, very easy. So basically, he asked the Symfony Flux server, is there a receipt for that package? If server says there is no receipt for that, you do that manually. You just configure it as you did before. But if Symfony Flux server say, yes, I have receipt for that, he will decide which package to install, and he will run any tasks that are written in a receipt. Receipt looks like this. So this is for mailer receipt, for a Swift mailer. It says add it to the bundle, so it will be added for all environments. Second thing is that copy the configuration files to config directory, add some environment variables, and there are some aliases, because for the official packages we can use aliases. So if you do composer require mail or mailer, it's the same thing. So as I mentioned, this receipt is official one. We have two different repositories for receipts. One is official, which is maintained by Symfony core team, and they are deciding what can be official, what cannot be official. Second one is contrib, which can be done by any of us. Any developer can contribute with some custom receipts. The biggest difference between two of them is that contribute ones cannot use alias. That's the only difference, actually. If you want to check which receipts exist, there is the website flux.symfony.com, and you can see all the list of the receipts which are marked with contrib or official one. If you click on some receipt, it will go to the GitHub repository, and you can see what's inside it. So basically, you will see it here. So in the manifest.json file, there is some receipt. What will happen when you downloading that receipt. So the evolution of installing the Symfony started from downloading the zip file, then we had some custom Symfony installer, then we went using Composer, then in the end, now we are just starting with Symfony Skeleton. Skeleton, inside if you open the Skeleton Composer JSON file, you will see that inside you only have basic dependencies for running the framework. You don't have twig anymore, you don't have annotations and things like that. You need to add them customly. So there are two ways how you can start new Symfony project. One is using Composer, so you can start Symfony Skeleton, or if you want to use if you are building traditional website like with Symfony Standard Edition in Symfony 2, you can use Website Skeleton. If you want just to play and see some best practices, you can use this demo. What I'm suggesting you to start using Symfony Client, actually. It's very easy to install. It's just in console. It's one line for installing, but you are getting all these things. So if you are like switching from the project to the project, or you are just trying something, you have built-in server inside it which supports TLS certificates, HTTP 2 protocol, multiple PHP versions, and much more things. And it works on Windows also. So this is something that is not so. They could improve documentation of this. There is very nice talk from the Symfony Con by Fabien Potencier about this, but tool is very powerful. And it's quite easy to start new project with this. So basically you need Symfony, new my project, or if you want full skeleton, you will use Symfony new full my project. And the only thing that you need to type in the console is Symfony server, and your server is up, and you can start working. It works like this. So I installed the new Symfony. And I just started server here. Okay. The good thing that I didn't mention, this is actually parsing your log file. So you are getting friendly messages from your log file, what's happening with your application, and you can read that very easy. And this is if you don't have any controllers or anything, as I have here in the project, you will get just blank page, which is pointing you to Symfony direction. But you saw in a very easy way how to start and download the Symfony project. The code, the organization, the structure of the folders inside the Symfony 4 is changed comparing to Symfony 2, Symfony 3. So we have, I will say, more natural configuration now. So if you can see here, this is the config folder where entire configuration goes there. And by default, so receipts configuration will be copied there. The second folder is a public. We don't have web folder anymore, and we don't have different controllers for different environments. We only have one controller, and then controller it decides which environment is based on environment configuration. Second thing is SRC folder, where entire code goes as before, but as you can notice, there is no bundles anymore. I will talk about that a little later. So yeah, controllers, your code goes here. Cache and log is inside the var folder. Vendors are in vendors folder, and then we have environment variables. We have something new here, which is called symfony.log file, which is actually used by the Flux to track all the receipts that you install. So basically, if you want to remove something, Symphony Flux can check here what is installed and how to remove that. Regarding the env files, we no longer use parameters YAML as place where we are holding our variables, but we are using env.environment file, and it's more flexible, but regarding the security, it's still the same. So don't commit your secrets inside your environment files. How you can use it for different environment is here. So basically, this .env file should be committed and should contain defaults configuration. This is your local file, which should not be committed, and same thing goes for the tests. So basically, what you should have here is just a defaults. So when you are configuring the project that you need that you know what you need to put there. Okay, and once again, don't do this. Like, there is a lot of people who put like database root passwords and everything inside environment file, commit that and put on a GitHub or something like that. Usually what people are doing, they are Googling for this file and searching for some vulnerabilities of your projects. Okay, let's move to bundleless application. Who's using bundles when it's coding? Okay, when I switched from Symfony 1.4 to Symfony 2, like bundles were, what is this, like why? And then after a while, I actually did everything in the bundles because it was like easy to organize my code. But actually the bundles give us some level of complexity that we don't need. Like, we can separate our code inside SRC folder without bundles. So usually what our bundles are for, they are for reusable code. But usually if you are working on some projects, when you are starting the new project, there is really, really small chance that you will reuse something. If you are reusing that, actually you should pack that as separate bundle and then download it via Composer or private repository or whatever. So basically, and this is the good thing, how I see this bundleless is a good thing because now we are moving to some kind of standardization for the Symfony application. Previously it was, you are doing bundles, I'm not doing them. Second person is again not doing bundles. Now we have like there is no bundles, and it's much. I will say from the standardization point, it's better. Still bundles exist, but for, as I said, for the third-party libraries and some things that we really want to share to the projects. We have namespace for that. It's app, and it reduces the perceived complexity and makes your code look more decoupled from the Symfony framework. Okay, auto-wiring. Who is using auto-wiring? Okay, few people. Cool. So auto-wiring is not a new thing in Symfony 4. Actually, it's implemented in Symfony 3, but it's became like very popular with Flux and Symfony 4. So what actually do auto-wiring? It do that we don't need to configure services manually. So basically what we did previously, we defined some ID for the services, then we said this is that class and we will inject this, this, and this. What actually now is done by auto-wiring is that we are using the full qualified name of your class as ID, and then when Symfony scans through your code, it can build container automatically, so we don't need to do that manually. A lot of developers think this is a bad thing because there is a lot of magic, but actually there is no such big magic behind the auto-wiring. The thing is simple, and probably all of you here could implement something like that in matter of few hours after you get under the hood and see how it works. Why it is very important? It is very important because it reduced the time, it's reduced the amount of time that we are spending on doing tasks that can be automated. And it's much easier to prototype, to build some products quickly, and then, of course, use it in production. Second thing, where you should not use auto-wiring, from my point of view, is when you are open sourcing some component or some bundle. So basically define the services there because it will be much easier to override them, and that will work perfectly as before. This is the default configuration of Symfony 4, which you get for auto-wiring. So basically it says that auto-wiring is enabled. You can put that to false and then you will not use. It says like use all the files inside src folder except this one for creating the services. And there is no anymore, here was public false, but that's by default now. So basically all the services that we have auto-wired are marked as private, which means that you cannot use this anymore. And this improved performance a little bit in Symfony 4. This is how it works. It's very simple. So basically the only thing that you need to do is type hint the service you want to inject. And you don't need to configure anything. You just need to have this set up, type hinted, and that works. Good thing is that if something is not working, you will get actionable error mistakes. So it will say like, this cannot be auto-wired because of that. And then you can fix that. For example, I started last week one of my pet projects, so I started build REST API for some application on Cilius, and they are like in transition to Symfony 4, and the auto-wiring for the most of the things doesn't work. The very important thing is that you understand how it works, and then you can set up, and it's very easy to work. If you don't know how auto-wiring works, actually what's happening and how dependency container is built, you will probably have the problem. I see that maybe as potential problem for new developers who will start using Symfony in upcoming years. And this is how you can debug your auto-wiring components. So basically, if you put this in console, you will get the list of all services that are auto-wired. Anyone using Core Webpack? Just 1-2 persons. Okay, so in Symfony 2, we had a static bundle, which was like, okay, it worked, but it's not something wow. And it didn't follow the front-end technology, so basically the front-end technologies were progressing much faster than a static bundle. So basically what's built here is Webpack and Core. It's a simple way to integrate Webpack to your front-end stack in a Symfony 2. The only thing that you need to do is actually composer require Webpack and Core, and this can work outside of the Symfony. So once you put this in a console, you will get this inside your project. So basically you see, you will get asset folder, you will get app CSS, app.js folder, you will get JS file for configuration here, packages JSON, Symfony lock, everything will be updated automatically for you. And this is basic configuration. We'd say in which folder, for us it's here, you need to put CSS and JS files, and it will start compiling for you automatically. Of course, first time when you start using this, you will spend some time to get it work, but after a while, it's very easy to use. And as I said, because there is a lot of facet methods here, which actually make work with Webpack much easier, you can use this also outside of the Symfony project in any JavaScript project, for example. Okay, I told you already this, what we got. This everything was set up by Receipt. I didn't do anything. I just ran Composer, Require, and Core in Terminal. Regarding performance, Symfony 4 is the fastest Symfony version ever. So Symfony 3.4 was the slowest one. And it says that Symfony 4.0 is almost 3 times faster than Laravel 5.5, which is true if we take like Hello World test. But Laravel comes with all dependencies for database managers and everything else. But still, if we put a traditional web application, Symfony is faster, but not 3 times. So have some consideration about this measurement, because you know that Hello World test is not always the best test ever. Of course, if you are using higher versions of PHP, you will get some performance improvements, and Symfony 4 works only on 7.0 and up. This is, again, one of the amazing things. Like, we are all in software development, so we know how hard it is to plan releases and how hard it is to maintain different versions of software. But Symfony has actually amazing system for doing that, and they are always on a track. Like, all these releases which are planned will happen exactly as planned, and you know how longer some versions will be supported. I think the biggest problem why a lot of people still is not using Symfony 4 in production because there is no long-term support version yet. I think 4.4 will be the next one with LTS, and there is LTS here for 3.4 still. But you are getting more and more good features. You will see later a list for the 4.3 Symfony, which is like 30 seconds of scrolling to the website. Updating to Symfony 4, it's not something that's like Symfony always care about backward compatibility. So basically upgrading to Symfony 4 will take some time because you will need to clean a lot of your code. You will need to reorganize it in a new code structure, but it is possible. The only suggestion that I have here, upgrade first to Symfony 3.4 if you have version lower than 3.4, because Symfony 3.4 has the same features as Symfony 4. The only difference is Flux later. Regarding the new version, which will be released in next week or something like that, that's the 4.3 version, and this is the list of the features that are implemented inside Symfony 4.3, sorry. So it's a huge list. I scroll it like 30 seconds, something like that. Some of the features are just fix or improvement of the component, but for example, in Symfony 4.4, we got the messenger component, which is very powerful, especially if you are working with message queues like RabbitMQ or something else. It can work with almost anyone. Okay, what's the philosophy behind the Symfony 4? It's actually, what I want to achieve is that you can focus more on delivering the features, not thinking about the framework so much. So basically, there is automating configuration because of that. There is great error messages. It may sound funny, but you have amazing error messages which actually describe in a human language what you need to do, what you need to fix. So you don't need to dig so much. And this is, I think, achieved in Symfony 4. Of course, still for the new developers, it will be very, very easy to start because you don't need to think about many things. But mastering the Symfony 4, from my perspective, for new developers, I think it will be harder than doing that in Symfony 2, for example. But if you started with Symfony 2 and then moved to Symfony 4, for example, you will have like amazing tool for building your application. So for me, I'm using Symfony 4 for a year now, and I'm like really, really happy about framework. I think it's really nice to work with. I'm even very, very happy with this built-in Symfony server because like I'm jumping from the project to the project, always having some pet projects that I'm working on, and I want some tool which is very easy to start and stop when I don't need it, and that was like perfect tool for me. Of course, if you have some complex infrastructure, that won't work for you. Symfony has great community which is planning and developing framework in very, very good way. So I think the future for this framework is amazing. I saw already some hints and plans for Symfony 5 version. They are trying even to reduce the database more than they did in Symfony 4. New code structure organization, it's more natural than before. I already mentioned that. And what I love most is that we are moving to some standardization of working with Symfony framework. Like if we have too much choice and if we can, everyone will do that in a different way. But if we have like one general idea how we should develop application, and if it is that best practices, then I think we can improve as developers also. It's also great as a micro framework. So I did few projects which are just console command application, not even having the database, just doing some task and sending some message to somewhere else. So if you want to build some small microservices, it's still very, very good tool for you. Even if you want to build big monolithic full stack framework application, still it's good solution. So yeah, I think it's a perfect fit for modern web applications now. And for your next projects, for your new projects, I think you should consider Symfony 4 as starting doing work with it. Also, what's amazing thing is that in any way, Symfony should not limit you. Like if you want to do code organization in any way you want, you can change configuration, you can adjust that to your needs. So there is no limitation by the framework in a way how you are doing. So building any kind of architecture, whatever you want, you can do that inside Symfony. Yeah, and that's it. So, questions?
Konferenciju radimo. Pa nemam pojma, možda još jedno sat vremena. Aj, moram da idem, ajde.
Yes, first question is that it seems that Symfony is trying to catch up with Laravel. What do you think? I agree with that. Because actually we discussed with a few people about that in SymfonyCon, I think in Romania. And yeah, because they want to improve developers' experience, and Laravel is doing that in an amazing way. So yes, they are, I don't know, should I say copy some things, but copy the philosophy of
Do you want me to read the next one?
If you want.
Okay. Many young developers prefer Laravel over Symfony. Do you think that Symfony is more complicated, harder to learn, and takes more time to build websites?
It is, yeah. That's the reason, because I'm not doing any work with Laravel, but I just read some part of documentation. It's much easier to start because like all the complexity is hidden behind facades, or I think they are using facades. So yeah, it's much easier to start, and once when you don't have so much experience, for you it's the best feeling when you can actually build something, and you can build things with the Laravel. But I think on a long period, like the Symfony 4 will change partially that, but even some other, like depends what do you want. I'm not saying the one or other solution is better. For me, Symfony is an amazing framework. I enjoy working with that. But still, probably it's the same situation with the Laravel. Maybe for some more complex projects where you need to have more flexibility to configure in a way how you want, you should use Symfony instead of Laravel, but depends.
Some people say that Laravel is only for small and Symfony is for large projects. Is it true, and why is Symfony good for large projects?
I think Symfony now fits for all kinds of the projects. That was in the past, usually people consider Symfony for bigger projects and Laravel for prototyping some things. That's the feedback I got. But I think now with Symfony 4, you can build smaller projects, because in the past, usually when you have some small application or some small APIs, they suggested to use the Silex. Now you don't need to use Silex because Silex is dead, and you can use Symfony. So yeah, I think now with Symfony 4, Symfony is much better fit for small application comparing to Symfony 3 and 2. Because as I described everything in the slides, like that inheritance of entire framework with 70 plus components was too much overhead for small applications.
How do we avoid having an overly large number of auto-wired components in a constructor?
By writing a good code. if you are putting, again, my opinion, if you are putting too much, if you have huge list of dependency components in your constructor, that probably means that you break some solid principle. So try to follow solid principle, because entire framework is actually built on the solid principles, and you should probably be able to reduce the list of the injected components. Also write the tests, and then you will see where is your logic too complex, can you separate it. That's the only advice I have for that.
And last but not the least, should we add symfony.log to
No.
Git ignore?
You are committing that because you want to, that's the same at the beginning of the composer JSON. A lot of people avoid to put in composer lock in a Git repository. You should put it because you want to install the same application on a server. But you are actually committing all the configuration files also inside repositories.
Okay, we've got two more.
Okay, let's go.
They're just getting righted now. According Symfony best practices, we should use Yota conditions What do you think about the other conditions, and do you see it in your projects?
I think they are okay, and I think that depends from the team to team. Like if your teams use that as your code standard, use it. There is no anything wrong about that. Still, if you want to not using it, I still think it's okay. For me personally, I'm using it because it's forcing me more to debug inside the code. But they are like, I think it was even more important in the past, but since the PHP as a language made a huge progress, you can do also much more things to avoid simple bugs like that.
And should we say this is the last one? Do you think Symfony documentation can be confusing for beginners?
Yes and no. Yes, because there is too much things, and people usually not reading the part they should read. So basically, I don't know anyone at the beginning who is read. There is 6-part tutorial how to build your own Symfony, and none of the developers in first 6 months actually reads that, and that's the most important thing because you will get the old concepts of the Symfony and you will be able to set up your own framework. And if you start reading like auto-wiring and dependency injection and everything else, maybe it's just too much things, and then you go to the Laravel and you just start building things. So maybe that's also the answer on the question before. I think documentation is good because when I started using, there was no documentation, so I basically learned Symfony 2 from open source bundles. But yeah, it can be confusing, but if there is someone who can point you what to learn first and how to follow it, I think they can learn a lot from the documentation, and documentation is actually a good part of the Symfony. It's well written, I would say, in the end.
Can we have another applause for Antonio? Thank you, Antonio.